In just 11 minutes, uncover the most explosive insights from Joe Rogan's conversation with comic and political commentator Dave Smith. Who really runs America, if not the people? These 10 takeaways reveal hidden intelligence agency power, media's biggest trick, the cost of endless wars, and libertarian solutions for freedom. Takeaway 1. Who really runs America? Joe Rogan and Dave Smith start by asking a powerful question. If America is supposed to be a democracy, then why do so many decisions feel like they are made without the people's consent? Dave explains that intelligence agencies, corporate lobbyists, and powerful insiders often pull the strings behind the scenes. Joe brings up a chilling moment when Senator Chuck Schumer once warned on television that any president who crosses the intelligence community is making a mistake, because these agencies have 7 ways till Sunday to strike back. This means that even the President of the United States may not really be in control. Dave says this should terrify every citizen because it shows that power may rest in secretive groups that nobody voted for. When people wonder why wars continue even when the public opposes them, or why censorship policies spread even when voters are against them, the answer might be that ordinary people are not steering the ship at all. For example, many Americans were against staying in Afghanistan for 2 decades. Yet the war kept dragging on until finally it ended in chaos. This is not the kind of outcome you would expect if the people were truly in charge. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2. Intelligence agencies manipulate politics. After laying out the big question of who runs the country, Dave Smith explains that the CIA and other intelligence agencies do far more than just gather information. He says they operate like shadow governments that start wars, topple leaders, and even run operations inside the United States. Joe points out that presidents are often kept in the dark because the agencies know that if a leader tried to expose their actions, he could be removed or silenced. They talk about Bob Woodward, the journalist who became famous for Watergate, and how his reporting later turned out to distort quotes or tell only part of the story. Dave argues this shows how the agencies manage public opinion by planting stories or influencing journalists. Joe says bluntly that the president is not really the boss, because if he angers the agencies, they will ruin him. For example, when Ronald Reagan was president, his administration was linked to cocaine being trafficked into U.S. cities to fund foreign operations. It is hard to believe Reagan himself would ever approve such a thing, which suggests agencies were running the show while the people remained in the dark. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Media narratives shape public thinking. Once intelligence agencies and insiders push an agenda, the media becomes the tool to sell it to the public. Dave Smith and Joe Rogan talk about how both the left and right sides of mainstream media spin stories that fit their chosen narrative. When Dave challenges these narratives, critics dismiss him by saying he is only a comedian, not an expert, but they do not hold others to the same standard. Joe recalls how after 9/11, the media repeated the line that terrorists hated Americans for their freedom, which was a simple but false story meant to justify wars. Dave says the media rarely debates facts honestly and instead relies on smearing those who question authority. This matters because the majority of people form their opinions from headlines and repeated phrases, not from digging into details. For example, in the lead-up to the Iraq War, the media spread the claim that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And this story was repeated so often that people believed it without evidence. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. Fear is a tool used by governments. Joe and Dave agree that fear is the most effective way to control people. During COVID, officials even admitted that Americans were not scared enough, so they deliberately pushed fear to increase compliance. When people are afraid, they stop thinking critically and hand over control to the authorities. Joe compares this to the aftermath of 9/11, when Vice President Dick Cheney warned that another attack was certain, which kept the public in a constant state of fear. This fear made people accept wars, new surveillance laws, and the Patriot Act without much resistance. Dave points out that fear also affects health. He believes many people became sicker during COVID because anxiety weakened their immune systems. For example, he recalls how many citizens panicked, lost sleep, and imagined they were dying the moment they tested positive, which may have worsened their outcomes. Fear does not just change minds, it can destroy bodies. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5. Wars are often pre-planned. Dave Smith argues that wars are not accidents, but carefully planned strategies waiting for the right trigger. He brings up the Project for a New American Century, a document written by powerful insiders before 9/11, which said that the United States should fight multiple wars to secure dominance in the 21st century. The only problem, they admitted, was that the public would not support it unless there was a new Pearl Harbor type event. Then 9/11 happened, and suddenly all the wars they had wanted became possible. Joe agrees, saying that he remembers how after the attacks, Americans gave George W. Bush a blank check to fight whoever he wanted. Dave says the Iraq War remains one of the most infuriating examples because it was based on lies and killed hundreds of thousands. For example, soldiers were sent to fight and die in Iraq, while the supposed weapons of mass destruction were never found, showing how pre-planned wars can drag entire nations into tragedy. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. Propaganda is pushed through culture. Beyond news and politics, Joe and Dave discuss how entertainment can also be used to guide society. Joe recalls hearing gangster rap for the first time and being shocked that major record labels were releasing music celebrating crime and violence. Later, he learned about theories that intelligence agencies may have encouraged this genre to fill prisons and justify harsher policing. Dave points out that this idea is not far-fetched, since the Reagan administration really did traffic cocaine into the United States while promoting the war on drugs. Joe says that culture is one of the most powerful ways to influence people, because songs and movies can shape behavior without people realizing it. For example, the glamorization of gang life in music made crime look cool to many young people, which led to more arrests and a bigger prison population. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. Experts are not always trustworthy. Dave Smith jokes that he is not an expert, just a comedian. Yet he can still expose flaws in the arguments of politicians and pundits. Joe Rogan agrees, saying that even in areas where he has deep experience, like martial arts, he is not an expert in every part of it. The bigger point is that many so-called experts are not reliable. During COVID, scientists and officials claimed to be following the science, but many of their predictions turned out to be wrong. Dave argues that people hide behind the title of expert as a way to shut down discussion rather than debate the facts. Joe says, what are the facts? Does that submission work? Is that genocide? What is going on? Showing that asking clear questions is often more valuable than appealing to authority. For example, during the lockdown debates, health experts promoted school closures, but ignored the damage to children's development, proving that no single expert had the full picture. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. The cost of war is hidden in inflation. Dave Smith explains that wars cost trillions of dollars, but instead of raising taxes to cover the cost, the government borrows and prints money. This leads to inflation, which means ordinary people pay through higher prices instead of direct taxes. Joe agrees, saying that Americans feel crushed by rising costs, but do not see the hidden hand that causes it. Dave connects this back to Nixon taking the United States off the gold standard in 1971, which removed the last limit on government spending. Since then, inflation has punished the middle class, while the wealthy benefit from rising asset values. For example, young adults today graduate with heavy debt and find that houses cost hundreds of thousands more than their parents paid. Yet few realize these costs are tied to endless wars funded by printed money. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9. Libertarian ideas offer another path. After describing the problems, Dave Smith presents his libertarian philosophy as a possible solution. Libertarians believe in limited government, sound money, and avoiding foreign wars. Dave praises Ron Paul for being one of the few politicians who warned about these issues decades ago. Joe listens with respect, even if he does not fully agree with everything. Dave explains that when Nixon ended the gold standard, Ron Paul immediately knew this would lead to an era of big government, and that is why he entered politics. Libertarians argue that freedom and prosperity can only return if government is forced to live within its means and stop interfering in people's lives. For example, Ron Paul's speeches against the Iraq War predicted how it would waste lives and money. but few listened at the time. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10, Ukraine war could have ended early. Joe and Dave finish with the current war in Ukraine. Dave explains that in early 2022, within months of Russia's invasion, there was already a peace deal on the table. The deal would have recognized Russian control of Crimea, given independence to the Donbass region, and guaranteed that Ukraine would not join NATO. But leaders in the West, especially Boris Johnson, pressured Ukraine to reject the deal, which led to years of bloodshed. Now, the best deal Ukraine can hope for is worse than what was possible back then, because Russia has taken more territory. Joe says most people have no idea this was the case, because the media still frames the war as Russia attacking for no reason. Dave adds that Russian leaders had clearly warned for years that NATO expansion into Ukraine was a red line, and ignoring this reality helped cause the war. For example, Ukrainians are now being conscripted into fighting even as many of them no longer want to continue the war, showing how political choices at the top can ruin countless lives. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.